I, male 32, moved into this neighborhood 2 months ago. The neighborhood is busy with many activities and events. I have a next-door neighbor named Steve from what I've noticed. Steve has an important place among the neighbors. He's conservative and somewhat influential, if this is the right word. So anyway, Steve keeps inviting me to participate in events, but I tell him I'm busy. I work long shifts as a nurse, and he seems to get personally offended whenever I decline. He was nice about it at first, and then he started spreading rumors about me being antagonistic, introverted, and antisocial. So I ignored him. Then he started complaining about everything I do or don't do, like my front door cam, the lights in my driveway, the garage, the dog, and the list is endless. I had a stern conversation with him in front of the other neighbors last week, telling him to leave me alone and stop complaining to the neighbors about me for no reason. He said something about how he was making sure to include me in the events and try to get me to avoid any violations about lights and pets. I said thank you, but I needed to be left alone. Apparently, I made him angry because he sent me a private text basically berating me for calling him out on harassment in front of the neighbors. He then cussed me out. Here's what he said. No one likes you in the neighborhood anyway. You are an inconsiderate slob and stupid. Just go away. You won't be missed and no one cares about you or your pathetic dog. I was shocked that this type of word choice came from a religious dude like him. I had it. I took a screenshot and shared it with the neighborhood group chat. There was silence on their end, but Steve came over this morning lashing out about how I'm trying to ruin his reputation in the neighborhood and turn the neighbors against him by sharing a private text that only I was meant to see. He yelled about how he couldn't even show his face at the church. I argued with him and then told him to buzz off and shut the door. I went to work and that was the last time we spoke. However, I did get a couple of calls from some neighbors about it, which makes me think maybe I shouldn't have shared the text. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. One should never assume that a text is private. The neighborhood needed to know what kind of person he really was and what he was putting you through. I'm basically trying to ruin his reputation in the neighborhood. Character is who you are. Reputation is who people think you are. This was just a correction of their perception of him. It's been 2 months, and this guy is already this far up in your business. My goodness, Steve needs a hobby. But honestly, watch your back and ensure he can't harm your dog. Regularly check your yard for food. It's happened more than once when a disgruntled person leaves poisoned food out for pets. He sounds vicious and will probably try to escalate. I get the feeling that many neighbors already know what the guy's like. They're just too afraid to make waves, have the same beliefs as him, or don't care. Regardless, OP is not wrong in this situation for calling out the bullying, but OP does need to tread carefully and document everything Steve says in case something does happen. Yeah, why would anyone expect the religious guy to be considerate, sane, thoughtful, or caring? From my experience, the solid Christians are the most judgmental, hypocritical, malicious, and duplicitous creatures on earth. OP, involve the police. That kind of text likely qualifies as a hate crime. I highly recommend you take measures to protect your safety. I'm getting some Dateline episode in the making vibes from this. Someone like this, who's unstable and is easily embarrassed and prone to viewing himself as a victim, is a serious problem waiting to happen. Please be careful and do not underestimate the kind of behaviors people are capable of. I grew up poor but worked harder than anyone I knew to become financially, personally, and professionally successful. My family was so poor that picking between bus fare and a meal wasn't uncommon. So when I started making a lot of money, a lot of people started to come at me with their hands out. I helped them out of compassion and empathy. Someone giving something so small to someone who has nothing can make a difference. I know because I've been on the other side. Every person I helped tried turning me into a personal ATM. I never had that issue with people who had money. That'd be embarrassing to them. I do not spoil my kids, but yes, we live in a nice house, in a nice neighborhood, etc. And I expect my kids to work and get good grades. My eldest son is a teen and got into trouble for telling a peer that he doesn't want to be his friend because he's poor. A teacher overheard and lost her crap. Unlike that dingbat dinosaur teacher, I got the context and facts before reacting. My son started to hang out with Austin. Austin would always complain that he had no money to do stuff, so my son would spot him. For example, a group went to see Top Gun and Austin had no money, so my son paid for his movie ticket. Things started to get awkward when Austin started to expect my son to pay for his crap. The breaking point was when their friends went to IHOP and Austin ordered a bunch of food. When they were figuring out who owed what on the bill, Austin casually said my son would pay for his meal too. My son just had onion rings and this kid had a meal, dessert and a milkshake. Later, my son complained to their friends about how I barely give him any money and has to work as a grade school tutor, only for Austin to pull these idiot moves on him. As a result, they all stopped talking or associating with Austin. Flash forward a couple of weeks in class, Austin asks him why he's not being invited to do stuff. My son said because he's tired of paying for his crap. Austin said, "I'm poor." A teen's idea of poor has last year's iPhone. My son sarcastically said, "Well then, I don't want to be friends with poor people and get a job like him." This led to a call from the teacher. I explained the context of the conversation to the teacher because she wasn't listening to my son when he tried to explain it. She said my son was mean and would be assigned detention. I told her that I was going to tell my son he doesn't have to serve detention over this, and what was she going to do about it? She said nothing and dropped it. Edit. Austin is not impoverished and living under the freeway in a tent. He can get a job like my son and other kids at their school had, but he chooses not to. Not the idiot. Go to the head teacher and explain how much your son has been emotionally blackmailed into handing over money and that the last time that friend's actions were essentially theft. He ate something he couldn't pay for and had no consent to do so, and your son was forced to pay. Say, school needs to teach pupils to stand up to emotional abuse, manipulation and bullying, and your son has a right to stand up for himself and end the relationship, and that his teacher should have listened to the full story. Everyone's the idiot here. Your son probably deserves detention for having that outburst, and you shouldn't be interfering with the teacher's discipline unless something is really wrong with how she's handling things. I think you need to help your son work in his delivery, or else he'll be dealing with more than detention one day. I agree. There's nothing wrong with OP's son standing up for himself, but the wording was unkind. What would have been just as effective and more accurate would have been to say something like, "I don't want to be friends with someone who takes advantage of me," because that's the problem, not that Austin is poor. For telling an entitled idiot to get bent and use his own money, yeah, he's going to run into so much trouble. It wasn't a bad delivery given the context. It was a sarcastic answer to someone using excuses for his bad behavior. The teacher didn't want to know what happened and took a poorly worded phrase out of context as enough to make a point. I met this co-worker, Christian, who's nice and all but made comments about my body and how severely underweight I am. My weight is low due to health issues. He'd say stuff like, "I like everything about you except the weight thing," or say, "You need to do something about this weight problem." He might be into me or something because of his behavior, and I don't know, he seemed nice and sweet, and I kind of liked the attention. He started bringing me donuts every day and telling me to eat them with my coffee. I don't like to eat in the morning generally, only drink coffee. I told him I'm not a breakfast person, but he insisted, saying he saw them at the bakery and thought of me, so he thought he'd bring me some. I thought that was nice and thoughtful since I'm often an afterthought and no one brings me anything nice. Days ago, I was passing by some female co-workers and overheard one of them refer to me and say, "Oh, this is the one Christian talked about." I turned to her and asked her to clarify. We talked and she told me that Christian brings me donuts every day because he said he wanted to fat me up so he could ask me out in 3 months. I was dumbfounded. I tried confirming what was said and she said she was willing to face him with this statement. I felt so enraged and humiliated, but I didn't say anything. I just stayed calm and collected. The next morning, he showed up with more donuts and put them on my desk. He tried to start small talk, but I got up, took his donuts, walked to the trash, and dumped them right in front of him and everyone else. He looked at me, shocked, asked what I was doing. I looked at him and said that I was not an item for him to customize, and told him that if he brought me one more donut, I'd report him immediately. He was in shock, but then walked out for a while. I got weird, judging stares from the others, who then told me I hurt Christian's feelings and made him look like he was doing a bad thing when it was just a thoughtful gesture. I told them about what he said regarding my weight, but they said I could have handled this differently. They also said I went overboard with the reporting threat. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your colleagues were correct. You made him look like he was doing a bad thing, and this was, of course, because he was doing a bad thing. This is harassment and likely against your workplace policies. Document every time he says something to you and keep reporting him. My mouth was hanging open in shock through this. Christian needs reporting regardless. That is not okay behavior at work, and could lead to his company being rightfully sued up the wazoo for clear and outright harassment. The comments about your weight alone are entirely unacceptable in the workplace. Some people cannot take no for an answer, and occasionally an act helps. You did not throw the box at him. You did not throw the donuts at him. That man is not nice. Those were not thoughtful gestures, and he's likely a controlling idiot in a relationship. Be glad you dodged that bullet. I'm a 20-year-old college student who doesn't live with my dad anymore, so I support myself with work and the savings I have, also by sharing with 3 friends, lol. My dad is married to Jenna. Jenna has a daughter Lee and a son Kyle. Lee is 18 and Kyle is a young teen. Lee had a baby 4 months ago. The father isn't in the picture and they're trying to get child support out of him. However, it's all on Lee, my dad and Jenna to figure babysitting and other stuff out. I had a weekend off a couple of weeks ago. My dad asked me to come home and babysit Lee's baby because they were all busy and needed someone to babysit her kid. I told him I didn't want to babysit and that I would chill for the weekend. He was like, all right, fine. Then Jenna called me and told me I'm the baby's aunt and I'd never met her and my sister needed me. I said that was their thing to figure out, and I reminded Jenna I don't have a sister. She told me I have since I was little and should treat her as such. Then Lee called and told me she was going to drop her kid off at my place for me to babysit. I told her she would not, and if we found a random baby dropped off at our door, I would personally call the police. She told me we're meant to be sisters and I'm meant to give a crap about her kid. I told her it was funny she expected me to help her out in a sisterly way, but she's never been forthcoming about helping me out as a sister. Her response? I'm older, so it's my job. I ended her call. The weekend has been and gone and I'm facing the wrath of Jenna and Lee now. Lee told me she hoped I caught herpes for being so unhelpful. Am I the idiot? I'm allergic to small children, I swear. You are not the idiot, OP. These people are ridiculously entitled. If you want a favour, you ask nicely. You don't make demands and guilt trips. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. I'm baffled by the I'll leave my kid at your house response. Like, honey, you're the one dumb enough to get knocked up. Why do I have to pay for it? You did right to say you call the police. You have to be adamant about that, as it seems she's the type to do that because she doesn't really believe you go ahead. Her entitled behaviour and comments to you mean that even if you had time in the future to help, you never should. There were 3 adults who live in that house. Why in the world do they need to drop a baby off for the weekend? Sorry, Jenna and Lee, it's their problem. Enjoy your life. Some folks show what they think of you when you only become family if help is needed. So do yourself a solid and plan a little vacation for any upcoming family holidays. It amazes me people don't tell their kids what my parents told me. If I had a baby, I was on my own. No help, nothing. They didn't want to raise my kid. Consequently, I knew I wasn't going to have a baby until I could handle it on my own. Now your dad and stepmom will thrust this job on everyone but your stepsister. My 35 female husband, 41, is extremely angry with me. My husband works from home and I work outside the home. His mom comes to our house a few times a week to help my husband take care of our child. Yesterday, while she was at our house, she cooked up some stir-fried beef, left it in our fridge, and went home as usual when I got back from work. It was the first time she'd ever cooked something for us like this, although I've eaten her cooking at family gatherings at her home. At dinner time, my husband pulled the beef out of the fridge. I'm not a huge fan of this particular dish, but I ate some and casually said, not bad. He was shocked that I would say something dismissive about his mother's cooking. He went on a rant about how rude I was being. I was disrespecting his mom. No one else has ever talked about his mother so disrespectfully, and if anyone else were to say something negative about his mom, he would cut them out of his life. I tried to explain to him that my comment had nothing to do with his mom as a person. Honestly, I was just surprised to find that the beef was better than I expected, and the words that came to me were, not bad. Unfortunately, he's convinced that I don't respect his mom. I've never said anything bad about my mother-in-law's character, personality, etc. I've never had a conflict with her. I've never bad-mouthed her to my husband. I've felt some irritation here and there with minor differences in approaches to raising a child, for example, but I've kept it to myself. Maybe my husband has picked up on that, but if she'd been at the dinner table with us, I would have probably said something a little nicer about the dish or said nothing. My husband has been building up resentment, and convincing himself that I hate his mom due to some little spats he and I have had in the past weeks about various household chores that are tangential to his mother being here during the day, but nothing directly about her, I apologise for coming across as rude and not showing more appreciation for his mom's cooking for us. Unfortunately, he's still angry and is now giving me the silent treatment. So, was I wrong to say not bad? Should I have been more appreciative? Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You said nothing wrong. Your husband is still tied to his mother's apron strings. You weren't commenting on his mother at all. You were commenting on a dish. People are allowed to like and dislike different foods without reflecting on who prepared said food. You said it wasn't bad. How is that in any shape or form rude? His reaction was very over the top and it's really suspicious, to be honest. You have something else going on here. Yeah, I suggest marital counselling ASAP. This is a sign of a huge issue. This isn't just about your comment. Something bigger is happening, even if it's only on his end. I'd bet money that during the days when his mom is there helping, she's putting these ideas in his head about you hating her. Why isn't your husband able to take care of his kid alone? Besides child rearing and cooking, what else is his mama doing for him? I just had a similar thing happen. For 4 years I got along great with his mom, or so I thought. Then he and I agreed on something, she didn't like it and he blamed me. The last time I saw him was just over 2 weeks ago, when he broke up with me right after Mother's Day.